Hello and welcome to another day of Aegis, this time with EMEA. We are almost at the middle of the season and we have three exciting sets for you. I'm Sparkling Iced Tea and I'm joined today by Spitz, and we are here to bring you the best of Legends of Runeterra competitive, currently available. Spitz, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well, and I'm really excited for these matches that we've got today. I'm quite a big fan of a lot of the teams that we have, and also some of the decks that have been brought, so it should be good fun.
Yeah, I mean, EMEA has a bit less teams than the Americas, which is maybe also because there are quite a bunch of EMEA players playing in the Americas. But we're going to see today that all those teams are pretty stacked and are, you know, quite well equipped to handle the current season and to get into playoffs. And that is really, really interesting. Starting with the first set, especially 3KG versus the Mayo group. I think you're a bit more familiar with all the players from Mayo, but I think they are honestly a super, super, super well-adjusted team going up against 3KG. Meanwhile, 3KG, unfortunately, is a bit more down on their luck currently, and they really need this win.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Mayo team being good friends with EMEA. I've seen him sort of like try and pick up these people and construct a lineup of people, even if one of them's just imported from America to join the EU League. But both of these teams are just like great players, like all around. Like I recognize these names everywhere when you look at like EMEA tournaments and stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah, especially we have Dyna, Sonic Holic, Ultraman in there. Obviously, you mentioned Keva as an America's player, but you know what? Keva has some EMEA experience, mainly beating EMEA in a big money match. So, well, Keva's here to dominate some more EMEA, but alongside of him, obviously, these three EMEA tournament legends. All of them have done pretty well in community tournaments as well as in seasonals. Now, while none of them have quite won a seasonals, Ultraman got so close so many times. So it's one of the best players we certainly have around here in EMEA. So I'm super excited for them to go up against the three kangaroos that are gaming, and they have some quite good players as well. We have ZZ in here. It's an old tournament legend from EMEA, has been basically playing since beta. Ashirogi, one of the best players we have, also from Germany. Shizo and Galore in here, so I'm really excited to see them maybe turn it up a bit more because they certainly need to. Currently, not doing quite that well in the group, but it's the midway point. If you want to come back, now is the time. The other two sets that we have today are ABG Demacia and Key Guardians, and then we have the last set is going to be the backseat set. Is going to be TKG versus We Love Gaming. Super excited for all these three matches, but especially for the first set that we have today. And as you mentioned, you are a bit more familiar maybe with Inyamo's Mayo Bandits. This is not the only of Enyamo's teams in general. Maybe in EMEA, but certainly not in the Americas, right?
I mean, not to mention anything, but I'm on EMEA's team in Americas, and we're doing pretty well. And it's partly due to EMEA, and definitely having him as a captain is a great thing to have. And just him giving advice. I know he was scrimming with Dinah just a little bit before the games were about to happen. So yeah, I think EMEA is definitely like one of the golden tickets to trying to get into a good Aegis run.
For sure. But also a golden ticket, as I mentioned, is Ultraman. Ultraman, certainly one of the best players we have, so super excited maybe to see him today. Dinah, you know, if you are an EMEA player, or if you are someone who plays tournaments in the Americas, you might know Dinah, and you might have faced him before, and you might have spent a lot of time playing versus Dinah, even though you didn't play that many games versus Dinah, because Dinah is someone who takes their time. And they do take their time very deliberately and think about all their plays, which in some cases has helped them, but we do have to say, in other cases, has gotten Dinah in some hot waters with the timer, which is a problem because obviously, I don't know how much it happens in the Americas, but in EMEA, we actually do have timer losses quite a bunch, even in seasonals. They have some famous cases of Fresh Lobster timing out, for example, in the seasons of 32. So you're always got to be careful with that one.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about as soon as you mentioned the time. Like when I think of timer, the first thing I think of is fresh lobster, and maybe that's a bit unfair to fresh lobster, but that's definitely happened. And this can happen in Aegis a lot. Like this isn't the first set that we're looking at for Dinah, but in the group set, when you're talking with like your friends and you're trying to figure out what the best lines are, the timer does matter a lot. When Annie and I were playing last week, we missed a Lee Sin kick. we just tried to drag with Lee Sin and it just didn't go through because of the timer. And so the timer can like impact so much. And so maybe Dinah will have some trouble in the third round. But we're here with the first round for Dinah.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is Dinah is an aggro player. So, you know what? Maybe today, maybe bring some aggro, maybe not falling to the timer. We actually do have the lineups for every of those players. And Dinah does have an aggro lineup, but we are looking at a completely different deck right now. And this looks amazing. So, you want to start this out? What is this?
Uh, to you by Runeterra. Yeah, this is Vayne Quinn that Ultraman is bringing. This is a deck that's sort of seen popularity sometimes, some not. It's mostly about like the Darken Harp plus all of the Demacia cards. There's always been this concept about like quick attack in the Demacia region, trying to fit them together. That's kind of what Sivir Akshan does quite well. But this also attempts to do that. I'm a big fan of this deck in the sense that it does a lot of the cool Demacia things where you're trying to out mid-range, and it's really cool to see Quinn have a new light with weapons. Quinn always had like enough health to do stuff if you could just make her strength matter. And the Darken Harp and all the weapons really are best when they're on high health units, and because most of the weapons are like strength buffs, right? So putting the Harp on the Quinn, putting it on challenges, putting on Valor can really just like blow out some games with just like these small little combos. I'm a big fan of this deck, and it can definitely both outgrind and also just put a bunch of pressure on.
Yeah, so I've never seen this version quite specifically. I've more seen the version with just a Fiora, or maybe just like a one-off Quinn. So I'm really excited to see more Quinns in this deck, because I'm not a big fan of Fiora currently in the meta. And Quinn, as you mentioned, really cool unit, has a lot of health, especially after the buff she received quite a while ago, and has been a threat ever since. Maybe a bit underused, maybe couldn't really find that right deck, bit too dependent on MF. But now with Vayne, has found a new home, so I'm super excited to see this. So far, I gotta say, I have not played a game with the Darken Harp. How often do you actually end up using the actual Darken from that?
Sort of, if you remember, like, if you're a Pantheon, right, and you sometimes use, like, the Haratsi, like, to sometimes, it just sometimes happens, and sometimes it helps you outgrind. And I've seen Stiratu, I'm pretty sure it's called, be played quite a bit. It doesn't happen every single game or anything, but when you need that top end and you don't have your Harpy or something, Stiratu can definitely, like, change things. Um, and one thing I should just mention is that one of the best parts about this deck, obviously, is that you've got so much access to Scout with Quinn, and as we all know, Vayne's Tumble plus Scout is like an insane blowout whenever you get it, because it's just an extra rally for free that you get every single turn.
That might become a bit more important in the future, because that golden Aegis that I see there is going to get nerfed in the next patch. So this might be one of the last times where we get to see this deck. Might look a bit different if it continues to be strong after the next patch. But again, this is just all Demacia, okay? We want to rally, want to attack as often as possible. We have some well-statted units to get us to the early to mid game, and then when we come to late game, we hope that the game is already over. Read of this deck, it reminds me a lot of the Mono Demacia decks of old, because honestly, we can't really afford to slap in Allegiance here, but we only have 5 PNZ cards, right? So this is basically a pure Demacia deck with some help.
Yeah, I would have really liked to see Venom in. It just doesn't fit in terms of like what the deck's trying to do. Like you're not trying to go like overly wide, but I miss my boy Bannerman. I've been trying to play him this season. It hasn't worked out that well, but I've tried. Um, but there's not that many PNZ cards that you really want to run, except the Harp, right? The Harp is the only reason you're in the PNZ region, and you're in there for a good reason, right? Like Harp does do quite a bit for this deck, and I find the Forge Thief interesting. Whenever you've splashed PNZ, you've always run Forge Thief for Demacia. I find it interesting that spell mana can definitely matter, and in Demacia, I think spell mana is like really, really important. And the spells that we have are pretty important, especially Catch and Sharp Sight, right? Being able to make combat just all that more favorable. But yeah,
Yeah, for sure. But the next deck is going to be from the 3 Kangaroos, and here we have Seraphine Nami. Looking at this reminds me a lot of the old PNZ Nami decks with TF Nami. Obviously, TF currently in the meta, not in the best of positions, just because there isn't quite as much aggro, so red card doesn't have quite as much value, and there are a lot of decks that can easily take down the TF, so flipping him isn't an option either. That said, Seraphine is here, and Seraphine is obviously one of the strongest cards that was released in this year, and she has all her support cards with her, the drum solo, the sputtering song spinner, actually allied. The biggest fan is not here. We do have Fleet Admiral Shelley, Wiggly Burblefish, and Acorn in here, so we have a lot of elusive threats. And this is basically how this deck wins. So if you've played some Fizz TF in the past, if you played some Nami TF, you know how you win this game. You stick a Nami, you stick some couple of Pebble Fishes, maybe you stick a Shelly. She's quite a bit better than Nami nowadays. And then you pop off with spells, and that's how you win. Seraphine helps you with that because all of a sudden you double all of these low-cost spells, and this deck runs a ton of them. If you look at the mana curve, 16 2-cost cards, 3 of those are Seraphine, the rest all spells. So you are gonna absolutely pop off once you have a Fleet Emery Shelly and a Seraphine on board.
Yeah, and I really like the Sputtering Song Spinner, right? Like, whenever you have a champion and a Sputtering Song Spinner, you just, like, go balls to the wall with value. Like, it's so insane, and when you've got at least a Nami buffing up a few elusives, it becomes really strong. Last week when we were looking at this deck, I noticed the lack of Poro Cannon, and it made some sense in the fact that you don't really want to be discarding stuff. It can be awkward, and this deck can play a little bit differently to the way it used to when it used to run Poro Cannon. But I still find it like really interesting to just be missing out on some of these extra elusives that I'm typically used to seeing in these decks. Do you have any thoughts about the lack of Poro Cannon?
Yeah, especially because Seraphine would double the Poro Cannon, right? So you would get technically 4
Yeah,
Poros when she's flipped. So I like a Poro Cannon as well, at least as a one-off. I can see that maybe
yeah,
like going super white isn't not really what you want to do here. You do have iterative improvements for Burble Fishes and Acorns, for example. So I guess because you have some alternative win conditions in just having Seraphine on board, maybe having some extra burn if you haven't played a Mystic Shot Make It Rain yet, or line up, or you can get some win conditions from Song Spinner. Maybe that's because you don't play it. But yeah, I do miss it as well. I personally would play it. That said, when it comes to quote unquote combo Seraphine decks, I'm probably not the person to ask.
yeah. I would like to see like a few more one-offs. If I was trying to build this deck, I would like try and include a one of Ramage, try and include that. But maybe I'm trying to build it more like old TFs where you really focus on the draw. Does this deck run? It runs Drum Solo. Drum Solo can definitely replace those cards. Drum Solo being one of the most insane cards released. Very surprising not to see it get hit by the Nerf hammer. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
in the end, this deck could struggle maybe flipping Seraphine because we don't have quite as many one-offs. So because we have so many spells, it is still quite likely that we will basically have a leveled Seraphine by turn 5 when we are uh, hitting that Shelly, or by turn 6. But still, I think a lot of people were talking about on Twitter that Seraphine does bring a certain deck building cost with her, where all of a sudden you have to run a lot of one-offs. Where is that deck building cost? I
yeah.
don't see it here.
Yeah, I mean, like Sputtering Song Spinner and the Seraphine like play effect like changes all of that, right? Because you're getting 4 just from like Seraphine and the Song Spinner alone, and then you can double all the other stuff later.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I do like the one Make It Rain though. At least there's one of that we can all be happy about.
Let's go. Yeah, that's pretty neat, especially with the line 'em up. Also with
Yeah.
Seraphine. And we also do have the Burble Fishes, right? The Burble Fishes do generate spells, so
Oh, of course.
those can also help flip Seraphine. Those can give you some one-cost spells that could be really nasty. That said, they probably come down when Seraphine's already flipped because you need to play quite a bunch of spells to get that Burble Fish to a cost low enough that you would feel comfortable putting it on the board. That said, Bubblefish, it's feast or famine. Okay, it can give you absolute trash, but it can also give you some absolute fantastic spells. So again, as usual with Seraphine, this is the last week potentially of Seraphine. We are maybe in it for an absolute RNG clown fiesta, and I'm all for it. Okay, if this is the last week, I want to see as much Seraphine as I can.
Yeah, I mean, may as well go like get all the RNG out of our system now before like the world stuff happens. And if we can see like the most RNG happen today, I'll be pretty happy.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. For sure, for sure. That said, on the other side, right, with Demacia, we have not a lot of RNG. We can talk a bit about the other decks that Ultraman, for example, has brought. Also brought the Ezreal Seraphine, so that is, like, I think the most common, the most played Seraphine deck, and potentially the most powerful. Although, I have to say, it is in steep competition with Seraphine Ionia, and then the Elise Gwen Katarina, so Red Gwen, which is just a very straightforward deck with some interesting playmaking potential. And what do we have on the other side?
I will open it up. We have Glaw's, Timo Zoe, and Fizzly Sin. Fizzly Sin's an interesting deck that I've seen 3KG try and like bring for quite a bit. And I haven't seen anyone else play it except 3KG, I'll be honest. I think it's maybe a bit more popular on EMEA. I don't see as much of it here. Um,
It's not. It's not.
Someone else has also brought Fizzly Sin. There are like 3 or 4 people that have brought Fizzly Sin. Um, I think it's pranks plus Lee Sin. You're, instead of doing like over one Lee Sin, you're using him a bit more like you would in like Victor Lee Sin, where he's like a removal tool that can push burn, can do a bunch of other things, and you're like pushing damage through all these minor values. and then eventually killing your opponent. And the other deck that Glor brought was Teemo Zoe, which is a deck that's seen a little bit of a rise. It's another like elusive beatdown deck, using the Darkened Lodestone primarily as like a really strong way to buff up all your elusives, as well as the Sudden Surge, which makes it a 5/5. Just
Yeah.
really interesting decks that I haven't seen many other places.
So I've seen the elusive deck quite a bit on EMEA. I played it a bit myself. You have to get adjusted to it. You really have to get into the smog mindset, and just maybe sometimes you keep some protection open. But sudden surge is often the card you actually just throw down. Okay, I have a 5/5 now. Let's go. I'm gonna swing in. I'm gonna pre-commit that. Let's go. It also plays battle bonds if I'm not mistaken, which is a card that we usually don't see. But here in this deck is absolutely fantastic. So really love to see that as well. And yeah. I mean, the Fizzly Sin, now that you do mention it, maybe it is a bit more popular here in EMEA. I remember that deck being played on Lee Sin's release. Or on Fizz. Never mind, not Lee Sin's. Fizz's release, I think.
Well, they
Back.
were the same release. It was both Bilgewater, right? But yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, was it the same? I don't remember. Like, when both of them were there and that very patch, we got that deck actually in EMEA, and some people tried it, and it had some success. So now, with all the more power that, Ionia has gotten, I can see it. I can definitely see it. Unfortunately, that is all going to be taken away next week. So this is the last week you can probably bring that deck.
Yeah, I'm glad to see some of the Ionia stuff going. Although this deck isn't running Ionian Tailstones. It's not really an Ionian Tailstones deck, but it is running Momentous Choice, it is running Wuju
Yeah.
Style, Pokey Stick, Sudden Surge, Deep Med, and then just like Hookmaster, right? And like if you can run Hookmaster in a deck, I think you're feeling pretty happy about yourself. You're also running Shepherd, and I think Shepherd plus Lee Sin's a really good combo because you can get over 1/1 Lee Sin, which is what everyone's always wanted to do, as well as like Scout.
Yeah, and it's quite a bit easier than just having your Hookmaster die and then replaying the weapon on Lee Sin if you can just directly pump that weapon on the Lee Sin. It's quite interesting because that opens up some playmaking potential. Like, for example, you have a Hookmaster and you have both of them, right? You have Hookmaster and a Shepherd on a hand. And all of a sudden, do you take the Overwhelm if you play the Hookmaster, or do you just rather wait and maybe risk it not getting in the pool from the Shepherd when you want to put it directly onto Lee Sin? It's going to be really interesting to see. But overall, Lee Sin obviously still a menace. Uh, from my side, it's a deserved nerf. Next patch, okay. I'm not a big Lee Sin enjoyer, not a big combo enjoyer, but I feel like Fizz Lee Sin might be the most exciting Lee Sin deck that we have, right? The other ones are pretty chewed out, okay? We have seen them a lot, especially
Yeah,
in EMEA.
I do like Fizz Lee Sin as like, Lee Sin has seen so many different plays and so many different decks. I think Fizz Lee Sin is one of the most fair versions, if I can say that. It just feels more like fun to fight as opposed to all these like all-in combo versions, or at least what I find annoying, which is fighting PNZ Ionia piles and just trying to throw stuff at them and then them always reacting to me in the most annoying ways possible. So them being limited to like pokey sticks is so much more fun than like concussives and mystics and all this sort of nonsense.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
yeah. Um, Although there is some RNG with Conchologist, and it's also running the Spirit of Wuju, which is a card that I don't think many people have seen play. It's a 5-mana 4/3 flow. I cost 2 less when I'm summoned, draw a spell. I think it makes sense in this deck as your only like real beefy unit that isn't Lee Sin. If you're not running concussive, you want at least one beefy unit. And I think this sort of makes sense. It's just an interesting choice. Do you have any thoughts on this card?
So my thoughts on this card is that exactly as you just said, I have never seen that card, so I'm quite surprised that it is in here. But it is a pretty interesting card that, you know what? In this deck, I can see it. You are activating flow a ton, especially with the pranks you have, or the mana you're getting back. You have a lot of attune here. You want to hit that flow. So it is actually some additional value, and it kind of works like a River Shaper, but I guess more consistent.
A little
Like,
bit, yeah. I don't think
yeah.
you can get strikes in as much with this deck, so I guess so, but it just looks weird. It just looks weird in the deck. You've never seen it before, but I'm sure Glow knows what it's doing, bringing it to Aegis. And I think here we're going to see the pick and ban. We are indeed.
All
So we're
right.
having Ultraman versus Zeze.
Ultraman vs. ZZ. Okay, that's really interesting because unfortunately we will not see the crazy Seraphine Bilgewater deck, but what we will see, I think decks that are going to stay competitive even after the patch. I think especially with the nerfs to Rally, we're going to see less of the smaller Demaster decks and more of decks like Vayne Pantheon. So really excited to see that here, as well as Nora Heimerdinger.
Yeah, Nora Heimerdinger is a deck that I don't think many people are playing as much. At least I don't see it much on ladder, but I know that a lot of people have been bringing it to tournaments as just like it's a deck that's got a lot of play when you're playing it, and also just like floods the board so insanely much that like Demacia struggles into it because they just got to keep attacking into a board that just keeps coming back. It can do well against aggro, and you can also outgrade and control. It's got a lot of play to the deck, and I quite like Heimerdinger Nora in this current metagame. And we've got the Seraphine Ionia, which I think is a lot of like competitive players' preferred version of Seraphine nowadays. Like this or SI, I think people prefer Victor as a more reliable win con. And I think it's a really interesting way that the decks have sort of evolved over time.
Yeah. Now, looking at these two lineups, I can actually imagine ZZ actually leaving Seraphine open on the other side because looking at the lineup, I mean, maybe Hymenora is just like about 50-50 into it, but the other two matchups you have should actually be favored. If you have Seraphine Ionia and Pantheon on your side, you should do pretty well into Seraphine Ezreal, if I'm not mistaken.
That's my understanding too. I think ZZ's probably going for an anti-Seraphine Ezreal lineup. And so we'll probably end up banning, I presume, the Quinn Vayne. Just because it's got so much beef that it can be hard for decks like the Seraphine Ionia to deal with, and I think Heimerdinger Nora will struggle with like the challenges and the strike spells and stuff.
So do you
But I don't know if
expect
Red Gwen's even tougher.
Yeah. Do you expect Pantheon to get banned on the other side? Just because I think the worst win rate you have here is
Yeah.
probably into Pantheon.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I'm mostly a Demacia player, I think, and
Oh,
yeah. Ooh.
okay. Pantheon is going to
Huh.
be left open, which is interesting because now that you leave Pantheon open, your opponent just banned their worst matchup for their Seraphine deck, right? Expecting you to maybe leave it open. But that all changed now, and now we have Red Gwen and Seraphine Ezreal against Nora Heimerdinger and Pantheon Vayne. This is a really interesting matchup, especially because of the Nora Heimerdinger. That is about 50-50 into Seraphine Ezreal, so maybe not like a hard counter. Certainly, if you tech it, it can definitely go up in win rate, though.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the Red Gwen list. There's a lot of interesting versions of Red Gwen that I've seen. This one is not, unfortunately, not running Vengeance or Fervor, which are cards, or Quietus, which are cards that I really like, especially against like Zeze. Like having a Quietus here would feel great against Hymenora. It looks like a pretty older version with the Hate Spike and the Burgeoning Sentinel. Um, but yeah, and we're going into game here.
Yeah, talking about Quietus, Quietus is actually a 3-off in the deck from Zaze. So this deck is definitely, oh my god. We have Minimorph, 3 Vengeance, and 3 Quietus. This is definitely tech to the brim versus Ezreal Seraphine. So even if ZZ loses this matchup, I think ZZ is quite fine with that and tries, or will try to bully out the other deck from Ultraman. But still, this is an important matchup for Ultraman because you basically need to win this one already because you don't want to like be behind and then have to play your unfavored deck. Now that said, just Katarina Gwen is also unfavored, right? I don't know how Katarina Gwen Elise does. I think it does a bit better.
Uh, yeah, this should be an interesting matchup. I think Ultraman could definitely go for a harrowing line, right? Like if they just put the pressure on and then hit them with a harrowing, like I feel like Ultraman is definitely in a pretty good position. But if Zeze can put down a Heimer and just protect it just for a little bit, it'll like stall out the game like forever basically. So it'll be interesting to see how the game develops. But we can see a Gwen and a lot of stuns and the Sentry Flock in hand. Everyone's favorite combo, Sentry Flock, been in the game since Swain. And that can be definitely a way to kill the Heimerdinger.
Yeah. Okay, so are you one of those, I love Sentry Flock, it should stay in the game forever, or are you one of those people that also like slowly get tired of it?
I think it could change, but I'm not against it being in the game. I think it allows for a lot of tempo plays, and I think it gives Noxus an identity that I'm glad it at least can play for. And without Sentry Flock, I feel like Noxus would lose a little bit of the deck building that it can do at the moment. 3 Gwen though, that's a lot of Gwen. I'm just noticing the hand from Ultraman.
Hey, you know what? As a Gwen player, that is usually not the worst thing in the world. Because that means, okay, if you lose your Gwen, fine, it's actually a boost for you. Because you get a Hallowed stack and you just stand on the next Gwen. Oh, I'm gonna lose that one too. Alright, I have 2 Hallowed stacks. Now behold my 3rd Gwen.
Absolutely, and I mean, like, Zeze's gonna probably end up having to Vengeance the Gwen, and if you can just tax, like, a 6 mana card for a 4 mana card, you're gonna get, like, 4 value by the time you play your 3rd Gwen. And there have been times where, like, I forget what the spell is called, Unit Atrocity, has definitely helped me win games.
Thread the Needle, if I'm not mistaken, should be the card.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is really, really good, especially as a reactive tool to something like a Vengeance. If you think you don't need a third Gwen in hand, and you are just safe, like having the second Gwen you can throw down, you could honestly answer like a Vengeance with Thread the Needle. It's a really, really good card. It is also a card that once you attack in with this Gwen, would be able to take down the Heimerdinger. That said, you do also have that Sentry Flock combo, and as you mentioned, one big win condition for ZZ would be sticking down this Heimerdinger, and I don't think Ultraman is going to let that happen.
Definitely not. We do see the second Heimer in hands, but, you know, you're losing a lot of tempo here. They're developing a 3-2 while you're out here only developing a 1-1 and losing, like, 5 mana. I guess you could probably get a Vile Feast here to try and flood the board a little bit, get as much value you can squeeze out of Heimerdinger before, you know, Swain's Bird hits him. But on the side of Ultraman here, like, the amount of burn that we can do with Fearsomes as well, I'm pretty happy with Ultraman's position at the moment. What do you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. This Gwen is also going to flip, as you mentioned. We actually need to Vengeance her next turn, because otherwise she is going to flip. And currently, obviously, the flip is not quite as good. But you still got to watch out for that. So it is going to be a point where ZZ is going to be behind, has the second Heimerdinger though. So maybe we survive next turn, we can stabilize. I don't see a big finisher in Ultraman's hand currently. And that could be the reason why Ultraman might struggle if he's not going to be able to finish the game in the next 2 turns. Again, you mentioned, could obviously play with like a big Harrowing, could obviously play with some free attacks and maybe some overwhelm units that remove some blockers, but we currently do not have any of those.
Yeah, I do really like the Glimpse Beyond though. The Glimpse Beyond is going to be the way that Ultraman like gets to refill his hand. He can replay Gwen even this turn and try and go for that Harrowing line. Although the flip to Nora can definitely be a big thing here. Like we see the Portal Palooza in hand, we see the Jump Construct. If like the Fearsome blockers can come out just by Nora summoning something from the random location where she gets all her stuff. And ooh, we're going to see the Thread the Needle on the Nora, especially just to avoid that, what I was saying, trying to make sure that there's no Fearsome blockers, because Zay should have a tough time getting Fearsome blockers.
Yeah, for sure. Next turn we can throw in Heimerdinger, but it's going to be a whole nother turn before we can play the Portal Palooza and maybe get a Fearsome blocker that way. Conch is coming in. Conch is kind of clutch. Can definitely get a stuns. Conch can get a boost for our attack, so we can make a Fearsome blocker out of a 1-1 or a 2-1. I think it's actually a huge card here. Now that said, the Glimpse is still sitting there, and that is a bit awkward because we actually kind of need to use it. We need refill, we need resources.
Pebbleberry Shake, Fearsome blocker. Very good on the side of Zay, and we'll be able to block a lot of damage by the time that you know, Ultraman gets to attack next turn. And if Ultraman doesn't find a good opportunity to Glimpse, I think Zay can just overrun the game. I don't know if Zay, do you know if Zay's on like Eclectics and what's the Yia spell? The burst focus speedy Yia. Biggle Dust. Do you know if he's on any of those?
No, this is a pure control deck, so we are just we are running a ton of removal. We don't have any space for that, unfortunately. We do have Eclectic Collection as a 2-up.
Okay, I think we're gonna see the Fearsome come out here, just by playing the 5-mana spell, getting a unit that has 5 strength, and just being able to block. Ooh, Castaway is interesting. I haven't seen this deck have weapons before, and Castaway will definitely be able to make anything a Fearsome blocker, which is going to be really strong on the side of Zay, because he's going to need Fearsome blockers for like 2 or 3 turns. And so being able to make anything a Fearsome blocker by just putting like a 2-strength weapon on it will be pretty big on the side of Zay.
They're also keeping 3 mana up, which is a bit cheeky, because that might mean Ultraman has to end up glimpsing something that he's not comfortable with. Because in the end, we do have Val Feast in here, we have Hate Spike, Pokestick, we have so many pings, that if you maybe glimpse the 3-1 here, you're going to end up, unfortunately, like losing to one of those. But now you have a perfect glimpse, right? You could deny some healing here while drawing 2 cards. And only Hate Spike is in your way, and it's a one-off.
Yeah, I think this glimpse might be forced, because I don't know when you're getting a better glimpse off. If they can hold up even more mana later on. No, they're not going to go for the glimpse. They're deciding that there's going to be a better time to do glimpse, and would rather trade off the unit and kill it, just in case I guess they've got other strength buffs is what they're scared of. They can see the Castaway in hand, can't they? You can see when Nora puts something in your hand? I think so. That might be why they killed the lifesteal unit.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can see it. That means that currently ZZ is looking absolutely fantastic. That can change. So we have a couple of draws, like because we don't have any hard removal on ZZ's side currently. If we find any of the Reckoners, the whole situation here could change. And now that ZZ actually spent some mana, Ultraman feels comfortable playing the Glimpse, but no, Conch to the rescue. This is not main
Boy.
deck. Oh.
God, what a blowout. I was thinking like Song of the Isles, like get that healing, but I think from the side of ZZ, I think not taking Song of the Isles was definitely correct. Not just because of that play, but if you're only losing to a Harrowing, Song of the Isles isn't going to save you. And you'd rather interrupt one of their pieces of interaction. And Ultraman, just drawing a 1-mana unit and not a 10-mana spell is feeling a bit bad. And I think Zeze, with the Eclectic, can definitely just push forward a bunch here.
Yeah. Now, we did mention that maybe Dinah versus Shizu was going to be the longest game because of Dinah penalties, but actually this is taking quite a bit longer. Dinah already is down a game, so Ultraman has to keep it up here. Potentially has to win the best of 3, and it's currently not looking like that's happening.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out how Ultraman can win. Even if there's a Harrowing, you get to summon 2 Gwens. That's, what, 6 burn? Is that even enough? Can Ultraman win if he does a Harrowing? We get a few Fearsomes, but the Fearsomes will just be 1/2s, except the Phantom Butler.
Can we? We can't flip Gwen, right? We have to give this one.
No. Yeah, because we only have 1 Hollow, right? So Gwen's only at 6 now, so this should be 9.
Alright, so next attack we flip Gwen. It's like way too late because unfortunately ZZ is gonna try to kill us in his next attack. Ooh, Shadow Out Hellstone's so good.
There's nothing to fear.
I think Zeze's got this. I don't think there's a way Zeze can lose this. It's just playing out the game, killing, I presume, the Gwen here, but yep, we see the surrender, and that's game 1 for Zeze.
Yeah, Ultraman not wasting any time, says, get me out of here, I want to play the next matchup, which, unfortunately, as we mentioned, is also not going to be terribly favored, because it is going to be Pantheon. First, maybe going up against a Red Gwen, but then eventually, even if Red Gwen wins, going up against the Ezreal Seraphine. So, Ultraman has a tough 2 games ahead of himself. But if he does it, that would be a great, great comeback. And you know what? Now that Dinah is also behind, Ultraman really needs to win this one.
Yeah, and what's important about this format is that you really want to play for your 2-1s, right? You don't want to just get 0-2'd immediately. If you can get a 1-2, that's really important for trying to do tiebreakers in the Aegis format, right? Every single game matters. Maybe not the outer groups as much, but a little bit. But every single game matters, and we're going to see, hopefully, like a 3-match game here, just to make sure that we get the 2-1s happening. But I hope we can get into a game soon.
I mean, currently maybe Ultraman might be deciding, hey, what deck do I want to queue into this? Because as you mentioned, it's important to get that 1 win even if you might lose the series. And now that series is obviously not over completely. Ultraman might somehow win it. Okay, this is LOR, this is a card game, everything can happen. But if Ultraman expects to not win this series, then as you mentioned, he does want to get that 1 win in, and now has to decide with what deck that is more likely. And we are going to requeue the Red Gwen into the Pantheon, but look at that hand. We start with Saga Seeker, and that is the perfect start. We have Wandering Shepherd as well already.
Yeah, Wandering Shepherd being able to proc the Lunari Cultist, get a 2nd gem. I've done this matchup a lot. This was one of the ones that I was mainly screaming for the seasonals, right? Like, these were 2 of the biggest decks last seasonal. And it's really tough on both sides. You have to play it really awkwardly. On Zeze's side, you just got to make sure that Ultraman never gets a good Harrowing. And on Ultraman's side, you got to make sure that you're pressuring them enough so that they're forced to do bad blocks so that you can Harrowing. It's all about playing around Harrowing, and it makes this a really interesting game. Zeze obviously passing on 1 to do the Saga Seeker play that everyone knows and loves.
That is also gonna get nerfed. Maybe not everyone loves it as much, which is why the Saga Seeker is unfortunately also catching nerf. I'm gonna be really interested to see what that is gonna be. Do you have any predictions? From
I presume it's a 1-1. What else can you do to Saga Seeker besides make it a 1?
0-2.
Oh, that is cool. I hadn't thought of that one. Okay. I like that a lot, actually, now that you've said it. So much for it can only be a 1-1. We're going to see this trade here. Get the Hollowed procs. You've got to get the Hollowed early as possible, and this sets you up for, like, flock type decks later on. So I really like this block from the side of Ultraman.
Now, let's see, the hand currently is not looking all too fantastic, but we do have Katarina, and this Katarina can be taken down if ZZ decides to go for the fish fight, especially because there's no mana up. How important is it, as you mentioned, you scrimmed this matchup a lot, to get the Katarina out of hand?
I think it's important. You're trying to like threaten a lot of like tempo plays and like threatening Zeze's mana, which can often be difficult to deal with. like on the side of Pantheon, right? You're trying to get your procs on the faded, and you're trying to like develop a board while also being tall. And if you're always scared of Katarina, you can't play your own game plan. You've got to play their game plan the entire game, and that's what Katarina sort of forces you to do. But trading off the Saga Seeker here, I guess trying to play around Flock and realizing that Saga Seeker may not be that valuable, but I don't know. Wait, hold on. Did I misread how the screen is? Give me a second.
This is a chance for me to leave my mark.
So, I mean...
I'm so lost. You go. Sorry.
Okay, I don't know what's going on, but yeah, you're right. We did trade off the Saga Seeker. And I think you were completely right. I think Zizi was just thinking, hey, this could potentially die to Flock later. And right now I have the opportunity to take down the Katarina. So why not go for it? It's a huge pressure point. And in the end, we do have the Vayne now on board. We still have the Lunari in hand, plus the weapon. So we will get Pantheon procs. And once we draw him, Ultraman could be in real trouble. And now, Ultraman does have Sentry plus Flock, the temple play, in hand. Let's see if we get Quick Attack or Tough. Oh, we get Tough. I like it. It's my favorite.
I do like the Tough playing around. Tough is a very fun keyword. I think it's one that's honestly underutilized. I think Tough is a really fun keyword to play around with. But I really like picking the Tough weapon just to play around Sentry Flock. Like, Vayne might be one of your biggest win conditions at the moment.
Very well.
Or we're just going to trade it off here. We have gotten a lot of hollowed. This is a lot of pressure that Ultraman has done, and seeing the single as well. I'm really liking Ultraman's position right now. The amount of pressure that we've been able to put on, having these fearsomes, having Sentry Flock in hand, having these 2 hollowed procs, now 3. I'm really liking Ultraman's position.
Yeah, especially because you mentioned if we do set up a big harrowing, this is a huge pressure point that leads to us winning the game. And I think what Ultraman is doing right now with all the early damage, the Gwen dying, and all the hallowed stacks is we are setting up quite a good harrowing.
Yeah, and while harrowing's not in hand, you're always playing about your deck. You're not just playing your hand, you're playing what's in your deck. And being able to have Glimpse Beyond to draw your deck is also pretty important. Zay's got some things that he can do here. Concerted's really good against like a Gwen top deck, and we've got the ability to block a fair few things. But I think Zay's just going to have trouble with the relentless attacks that Ultraman can do with these high power units. And getting... Is this the 5th hollowed proc now? If this goes through, is that 5?
Think it's 4. Wait, no, never mind. No, never mind. This should actually be potentially 6 already.
Jesus Christ, that is a lot of amount. We're going to see the glimpse here. I think this is a pretty fair glimpse. If the trade's not going through, there's no reason to really force it out, and you're gonna need your cards. A second glimpse allows you to draw even more, but the Vayne top deck isn't awful. Being able to like threaten a bit. I just don't know what you're going to tumble. What are you tumbling in, right now? You can tumble the Tough and do like a little bit of damage, but I don't know how that's helping your game plan.
No, in that case you would rather keep it for something more important, something bigger, like a Pantheon for example. Or here we could do a cheeky rally. Unfortunately this unit already has Tough. The stun comes through. Ultraman might be going for a tempo play here, might try to push a lot of damage this turn to have an easier way to close out the game. We could see a second Sentry here just to be able to push massive amounts of damage, because at 3 unit mana, there's not a lot of units that your opponent can throw down. ZZ has the Vayne in hand right now. But yeah, I like Ultraman just going for another stun here to say, okay, I'm going to push all the damage I can. And with the Flock is also going to be able to take down this 4-3 Scout.
Yeah, and while Zay's got a lot of cards in hand, 4 of them Ultraman can see. And so I think Ultraman has a pretty decent hand read that the first card might be some sort of spell, maybe an expensive spell, or like a Pantheon if it's not flipped yet, or a Campflor if Campflor's not flipped yet. And so I really like going for this high tempo play, trying to just push them down as low as possible so that they're forced to do even worse blocks as time goes on. And we also get to do the Glimpse Beyond and the Flock. We will be able to proc the Sentinel here, I'm pretty sure, and I don't know if we'll do this before combat. I don't hate doing it before combat, just to get the extra 2 strength through and change how the blocks might occur. And I think that's what Ultraman's thinking about, whether to do the Flock before combat or after, or during.
Potentially during. I mean, basically if you go for this, your opponent has to block anyways. Now that said, if you attack with the Burgeoning Sentinel first, that means it is always going to get blocked, right? And that makes a cheeky Flock play way less interesting, because you know it's blocked anyways. But might also...
I do like attacking with the 1/1 first. I guess the difference is that they might block the Vayne, do a value block, but I don't know if they can afford that in this position, just blocking the what would eventually be a 3/3. We're seeing the box
Ooh.
come out. Going down to 6 HP is quite low, and we'll see. Maybe it's Pantheon top deck with lifesteal can definitely change this.
Wait.
But just from the side of Ultraman, having all of this, both draw and damage, is really threatening.
Is so much damage. We're down to 4 HP. And there we have a Reckoner, not the one we need, but certainly a good one. Especially once we find another Gwen or we find some Overwhelm. Yeah, Zizi's looking really bad here. Basically, he has only the Concerted Strike to protect himself.
Saga Seeker, a little too late. I don't know how big the Saga Seeker can get. He can be a 4/4 basically, with the tough, or maybe 4/4. But I think Ultraman can just go wide here. I'll be honest, and being able to force a block, because when you do the fake rally with the Minotaur, it will just force them to block with something, and you should be able to push a lot through here. And if you have a hand read, you might be able to hate spike. I don't think this hate spike is bad at all.
No, as you mentioned,
being able to kill the goat.
Yeah, we do know 2 cards that are in his hand. I like maybe keeping it back. I think Ultraman is thinking, hey, as you mentioned, I think one of their cards could potentially be a strike spell, so I'm just gonna wait, and if they use it, then I'm gonna use Hate Spike as a response.
Yeah, I guess you can do it that way. I was just thinking that you might want to get Concerted out earlier rather than later to try and avoid the like if you get a Gwen top deck, but you can just wait until you get the Gwen on it. We're gonna see the rally, the Vayne's rally, not the Minotaur's rally here. Do a little trade, and I think this trade is pretty good for Ultraman.
Yeah. So
Is this lethal in hand?
not
with the Concerted.
Yeah, either we need to use Concerted here, or we need to give up our Wayne to a 1/1. We could at the same time take down something. Okay, we are gonna use a Concerted, which is right now not lethal on the open attack, but we are getting very, very close. Let's see if a Hate Spike is gonna come through just to get some value out of this. I like not going for it right now.
Yeah, I think you can, in this position, like, Hate Spike isn't doing that much for you, just hurting a Vayne. You'd rather kill a unit with Hate Spike. And while we can put Zeze down to 1, it won't be lethal. Do you have pre-commit Vile Feast? I think you do. Try and threaten a lethal. But it's just worse into a unit top deck. We do see the Vile Feast here. Hopefully this draw gives us a Pantheon.
And then the Pantheon also gets lifesteal. No, it is a strike
Fish
spell,
Fight
though.
is staying alive, though. We can definitely Fish Fight here and stay at 1, losing our Vayne. No, we get to kill the Vayne here. Because you can't do a weapon-based strike, so it's a forward and back strike. We can see the entire hand, and this should just be game.
God.
Keeping that Hate Spike last turn, I guess it didn't change anything in practice. But it definitely... Wow. This was a beautiful game, I'll be honest, these last few turns. I really liked how they all played. At least from the side of Ultraman. And you can see how this matchup is awkward, right? Ultraman was able to put the pressure on. Having the Katarina allowed that like awkward play in turn 1 to happen.
I think ZZ might be kicking himself right now, because I think this whole thing wouldn't have been possible if you didn't Fish Fight the 3/3. So
Yes.
if you played Fish Fight on the 1/2 or the 1/1, as you mentioned, we would have been alive at 1 at the end of the turn, and maybe would have had a chance to top deck a Pantheon. That said, probably ZZ wanted to get the most value possible out of that, and with that loses, and Ultraman wins a crucial game. That's a crucial point for them, and now goes into again an unfavored matchup. But you know, if I trust anyone, it's Ultraman. If someone can win this, it's probably Ultraman.
I do want to say that I think hitting the 3/3 is trying to play around like Katarina. Like if you top deck a Katarina, you're taking 3 damage, and you don't want to lose to Katarina. It's just a hand read of whether they got Hate Spike, Katarina, what could they possibly have? And so it's really just what cards you're playing around. And I think it's our instinct to go for the 3/3, go for the biggest thing, get as much value as you can. It just happened to be the wrong one there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's so many things you have to play around. I didn't even think about the Katarina, but yeah, you're right. If the Katarina comes down and then all of a sudden your opponent just has a burst, no burst, but a fast speed spell that kills you, and all of a sudden, even if you top deck a Pantheon, even if that Pantheon gets lifesteal, nothing matters anymore. So you would rather go for the winning play, I guess. But now we are in the 3rd and final game, and we have 2 back heli bars already in hand. Those are probably going to get tossed. Not the best card versus Pantheon. Frustrating card for sure. But in this matchup, you do want all the removal you can get.
Yeah, I do think. Do you ever keep Flock? I've not played the Seraphine deck. I'll be honest. I think I'm trying to keep myself pure and not deal with the RNG Fiesta. But watching it at least is very fun. I think you might be keeping Flock here. Yeah. That makes sense to me. And I think his Ace hand is pretty good. You want to try and get like an early Pantheon, I think. And so keeping Pantheon, keeping the Goat to try and get some gems early, I think is going to be really good on the side of Zay.
Yeah, small update by the way. Dyna did get a game win, so is 1-1 versus Shizo right now. That does take some pressure off Ultraman, definitely. Now that they have at least 2 wins in the bank for this set. Let's see if we might be able to catch some of Dyna versus Shizo after this. Dyna is again famous for playing slow, but currently Dyna's matchup is going a bit faster. Always finishing their games a few minutes before any ZZ vs Ultraman game is finished. There we see the Sentry Flock combo. And yeah, I can see what you mean. This is certainly a Noxus classic that if it goes, Noxus loses a lot of identity.
Yeah, I mean, like, Sentry Flock has sort of defined how a lot of Noxus decks have played, where they go down in card value with the Sentry Flock, but go up in, like, tempo and board base value. And obviously, Noxus can have other identities. They're not just totally subscribed to Sentry Flock. But seeing it here, like, this Sentry Flock play, kind of defines this matchup, right? We killed the Vayne, we killed one of their main power sources of the game, and Ultraman get to develop a unit and deal 4 damage with 4 mana and develop a unit. I think this has been a big part of how Noxus have been playing for a while. And while some people might think Flock doesn't make much sense in the current world, like it can be hard to justify Flock sometimes, especially in like Bilgewater and SI versions. I think in PNZ it makes a lot of sense still.
Now we have a 6-4 tough though. That is gonna be tough to take down. Now especially with the spell shield, we do need to invest at least a Mystic Shot plus Flock or Mystic Shot plus Disintegrate to take this down. But we actually go for the Song Spinner. Let's see what we get. Violent Discord. Not that good versus tough, unfortunately, but is in general a good spell for the deck, especially because it flips Ezreal that much faster that you even main deck it. Discreet Invitation, Blinding Assault. Very, very cool cards. I think Discreet Invitation is slightly better there. And a Pokey Stick. Oh, Blinding Assault.
Yeah, I think the Val is better. You really need units. I'm noticing a whole lack of units, and if you want to be setting up some of your flux and stuff, you will need some units. I really like the Discord here, even against this tough unit, because I think you're going to block, I think you're going to try and flock. I think they're going to do Spell Shield, and I think you're going to maybe pop Spell Shield. You might not pop Spell Shield anymore, considering that you know they've got 2 0 mana cards in hand. Like, you may just realize that this unit's dying. They're going to have something to pop Spell Shield with. Interesting pokey. I guess you're doing it just because it's free. May as well do it now. Drawing into the static shot. There's a lot of pings in the side of Ultraman's hand here. I wonder if the Cultist was better, just to threaten the gems.
Yeah, I would definitely have meant an immediate Flock from the other side, but again, Flock comes down now. It looks like we are also taking on a 2-1 here with the Violent Discord. Obviously playing it now, it only deals 1 because unfortunately we have not activated it. Haven't had any spell, any weapon, but that means actually the spell sheet is gonna go through because we didn't want to give up our Valor. That means 6 damage pushed here already, and that means we again have to invest at least 2 spells to take this down.
Yeah, we will have to invest a lot of spells to take this down, and even if they take it down, we still get the weapon back, and I'm pretty sure it's the Fearsome weapon. And Fearsome is good against these decks that just don't run any Fearsome blockers. The only Fearsome blocker from memory, besides the Sentry, is the bar, right? Like the unit that you get off the bar. And so I think Fearsome's going to be definitely a good way for ZZ to push through damage here and threaten like a lot of the ways he's going to get the lead off. We're going to see the Hookmaster. There's another Fearsome blocker. Okay, I forgot about this one as well. But we're going to see the Gems trying to beat around like Flock stuff, right? Gems I think are pretty important in this matchup, not only for proccing Pantheon, but also for beating all the Sentries and the Flux and all of this stuff that, as we've been talking about, is pretty big in the Noxus decks.
Yeah, I just feel like Ultraman might have gotten into a very, very bad spot by not backing up that Flock with the 0 mana spell last turn. Because all of a sudden, just having to use a Disintegrate against something to try to kill this, that's just so rough.
It doesn't feel good. It's tough because sometimes Expensive Protection is such a weird card to play around because it's so cheap and it's not permanent, and while you could have kept it, it's one card. I think it might only be a one of in these sorts of decks. and sometimes you just don't play around 1-Earths. But we're going to see 4 mana committed. Oh, we're going to probably pull with the Valor. We're going to see a lot of mana committed just to deal with this unit, which we could have dealt with last turn. And we could have had Disintegrator, which is going to be one of your biggest ways of dealing with stuff like Pantheon here.
Ooh, going with the
Oh
same
my
combat.
lord. I do
that
like this. Force them to do another spell.
So many, so much invested to just get rid of this, and that wasn't even Pantheon, right? So Pantheon can still hit the board, and can still wreak some havoc. That is really strong. Oh my god, a second Pantheon! Now we can, you know, just throw down a Pantheon at some point and not be that concerned, because we do have a second one in hand. Joral is a pretty good unit, obviously, just making all these spells cost more. Really good versus Ezreal Seraphine. Now, this is not quite an open attack setup for Joral, but I don't see any possibility of taking him down. Tough, such an incredible keyword. See? Tough again. Oh my god, best keyword in the game.
It really is a really good keyword. I do want to say that we saw a quick glimpse of the Pantheon, who's only at 2 of 5. Now, he will probably go to 3 of 5 this turn, and that should get him ready for the next attack turn, but it will require some, like, proactivity with your spells. What I'm missing from Ultraman here as well, the hand looks a little bit small. We do have access to Progress Day, and I think Progress Day is going to be really important here instead of Ultraman to try and get that refill, recuperate the fact that he had to spend, what, 5 cards or something just to kill a tough Ranger Knight Defector. No, we're not going to see it. I guess we've got the 2 statics, but I don't know. I'm not all that keen on static right now.
Yeah, I mean, we really need to take this Joral down. Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of options, but as you mentioned, yeah, that takes a lot of refill away from us.
Yeah,
Static
we
is
do
still
have the
expensive.
static, but yeah, it's just awkward to play static, especially against a deck that doesn't run pingable things. And while we can like ping down this Lunari Cultist, that's not a great feeling to have in the wild. And these weapons might be the 2 worst weapons you can get in the Seraphine deck. Like Scout is great in Demacia, but what you really want here are like strong units and a way to replay a weapon to give a lot of stats, and that's just not what the Scout weapon is.
Alright, we just block here. We have the fearsome weapon that we can slap down on our faded unit. So actually, Ultraman doing ZZ a favor here. He's saying, hey, I take it. You know what? I wanted this on another unit anyways. Now has to decide whether to slap down the Pantheon, maybe. Because you do flip him pretty soon. He's 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5 this turn, and then flips next turn.
I do like the Pantheon here. I think you're going to go for like a tumble line. And Tumble can't be punished. We can see the hand that we know it's not. Now it can be punished, unfortunately. But before it wasn't, just a second ago. And I think we might not. Okay, we don't need to go for the Tumble. That's fair. I'm trying to do too much damage here, and it's not really necessary. The Tumble isn't able to come back into our hand anytime soon, so I think we need to use it more of a combo piece. And we're just going to see Ultraman being a little bit of a tizzy. He can go for the stuff, but he's just going to be knocked out of existence, and I think Ultraman's going to really struggle if he doesn't find Flux.
Ooh, but like ZZ giving Ultraman the option here to find the block. I mean, nothing really you can do as ZZ, but that was still very, very scary. Range and Effector now found. Tumble. Okay, so currently activating your Pantheon means you have to use that Tumble. You probably want to still do that pre your regular combat attack, just to have like a flip Pantheon with all the keywords beforehand. But it's still kind of rough. You could also go for a full swing here, then go for the Scout, and then...
Yeah, I do think that ZZ's in like a pretty decent position where he doesn't need to commit to this Pantheon specifically, and has the freedom to play around stuff like Fluck. Let this Pantheon die and do the second Pantheon, and I think that's sort of the reason why he's not immediately going for the level up Pantheon line using the Tumble. It can definitely be difficult to decide which Pantheons you want to go for, especially when you don't have like a very obvious faded proc. Like we've got ones that can happen, but they're not the most enjoyable ones to go for. We are going to see this Pantheon spell try and push a lot of damage here, and if ZZ... Hold on, I've got to remember who's... If Ultraman doesn't have a unit, which he does, if he doesn't have a unit, this would be a lot of damage. But I think you can play the Fan Club and survive. Not through the Temple. Hold on.
Yeah, so like you can block 5 damage, but they are gonna be 12 right after plus. Not 12 after. It's gonna be 12 in total. No,
Yeah. He blocks 5, and then the Tumble goes through on the Pantheon and deals another 9 because of impact.
Yeah.
That is a lot of damage coming in from Zeze. And while we're probably going for I to burst speed a blocker, because I think we can see that we're going to need blockers here. Um, yeah, this is looking like. I think it's lethal. I think.
Oh wait, no. But with this line, we don't have the scout attack anymore. So, are we
Yeah, but we
planning
can
to?
tumble
You
the
going
scout.
to the show?
I think.
Okay, but then we can't attack with the Pantheon.
Right.
So Ultraman survives because we didn't do the scout attack first.
Sometimes it is difficult to work out what's going on. I made a misplay with a very similar thing doing scout and failing to realize how to tumble properly in my sets yesterday. Sometimes it can be tough, but it seems that we are going to threaten a fair bit of damage, but it won't be lethal.
Yeah, and that's very
But
good
I don't
for
think the
Ultraman.
Pantheon line was lethal. Maybe. Well, I don't think it was lethal, so I have to get alright in hand.
Yeah.
We're gonna give Ultraman an out here. He will have drum solo procced, I'm pretty sure. As well as Seraphine. We can definitely have Ultraman try and outvalue the Zeze, kill these units, and Zeze in hand only has 2 units, doesn't have way to proc faded, doesn't have a second Pantheon, and so if we can just deal with these units with the Seraphine singing her way to victory, you might be Ruthless Predator.
Oh my god.
That is really good.
Yeah, we have nothing we can do against that on ZZ's side.
Ezreal
And
as well.
Ezreal- oh,
And
no.
Bar. We can definitely outvalue here. Ultraman looking so much better right now. Just being able to kill the Pantheon with the Ruthless Predator, probably develop Ezreal, and start gunning them down as well. We're not going for Ruthless Predator, we're going for the defensive line.
But defensive line? I think this is the aggressive line because I think Ultraman is planning to burst speed kill
Ah.
BC next turn.
We got Ezreal would cost 0 mana. I'll be honest here. I thought cards had to cost mana. Turns out they don't have to
Nope.
cost any mana. And I think... Oh, I'm going to have to count how much damage we have. Wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I think we're 4 off. Or we're 2 off at the moment.
Oh, that.
I think we're 2 off.
That is not good then.
Did they forget the...
Wait. Oh, wait. What? Oh. Okay.
I'm not so sure about that one, Ultraman. But,
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, well, it's hard. Okay, like spell shield.
It is.
There's a bunch
Yeah.
of swirling purple stuff. Okay. But yeah, I think Ultraman just lost the game.
Poor Ultraman here. No, there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. I was trying to see if there's anything at all, but I just don't think there is. I think Ultraman was unfortunately 4 off lethal, and he needed to top deck like a spell. I would have liked to see the Ruthless Predator line. It does lose into like buff spells, but I think that's your most winning line to try and kill the Pantheon and try and like, you know, just throw a bunch of spells at Zeze. But I think, unfortunately, we're done here. We can kill Pantheon, but we're just gonna proc fade it, and I think that's game.
Yeah, I mean, we can just like put spell shield also back on Pantheon. Let's see if we can even kill Pantheon here.
Yeah. I mean, the Expansive Protection was a good top deck in that sense. Like, it is going to help us threaten lethal, but so would any other spell procking the faded triggers. So, poor Ultraman. I think he must have just not seen the elusive keyword. Maybe he thought it was Sharp Sight. I've definitely done that at least once. Wait, that's not how Sharp Sight works. That's when you're attacking. Never mind. Even my justification of why that could be right was wrong.
Yeah, I think Ultraman just like straight up didn't see it.
Yeah. Sometimes that happens. There's a lot of orange keywords. And I guess that's game on Zeze. Do we have the other games organized? I don't think we do yet.
So it appears that it is still Dinah 1 versus Shizu 1. So that has to be still going on. Dinah doing us a solid, maybe enabling us to jump into another game. But yeah, this was a series. I mean, this was a predicted outcome, right? We said this was going to happen. It was probably a win here for ZZ. But Ultraman did get that one win, and that was really important. Let's see if his teammates maybe can get their wins, because currently both teams are doing pretty well in their group. Obviously, at this point, if you are on Team Mayo, you kind of want to win a bit more because you're already like pretty good in your group. So losing in the middle of the split, not the best. You know, if you are super solidified at the top, would be a bit easier. But currently, I think they're sharing their group spot with like 2 other teams that are also 4-2. So it might be a bit more tough. And for 3 kangaroos, obviously, at 1 and 5, this is really important, right? Okay, so Dinah already won. Maybe you can get... no, I'm sorry. CZ already won. Maybe Dinah can win as well here. And it looks like that is about to happen.
Yeah. How much health do we have? You're right, one. No, okay, I think this has to be lethal here. So we've just jumped into a game, and I think the game is already over. Unless Shizu can top deck a further. No, I think that's just game.
I
well,
like
that was a
Dinah
quick
making
one.
sure. Yeah. Oh, that means Dinah wins his 2 and 1, which means that 3 kangaroos is mounting their comeback.
Hold on, isn't Dinah Mayo?
Oh, sorry. I thought, yeah, Dinah's Mayo. I completely. No, 3 kangaroos is not mounting their comeback. I take it back. Yeah.
So it
That
should be
means
1-1, is that what we're saying?
no. I think it's 2-1
No,
now.
Zeze won.
Zeze won.
So it should be
And
1-1, right? Dinah won. So that's 1 Mayo, 1 3KG?
yes, yeah.
Yeah, so it's all going to be reliant on the Keva set, which I think he's not playing today. Or is he playing today? I'm not so sure. But if he's not playing today, that means we
Yes.
are going to have to wait until tomorrow.
Yeah,
For when that's going to happen, or whenever that happens. But we're currently 1-1, and
That
yeah,
match
those
got
were some
rescheduled.
interesting games.
Really interesting games. And again, this is for the fate of the top of the group. Should the Mayo Bandits win it, and now with Dinah winning, they are 1-1 in the set. And again, Ultraman did win that one game in the game or in the match they lost as well. Now, as you mentioned, Keva not going to play today. That match got rescheduled, so we are gonna have to wait on that one, which means that we are gonna put our focus away from 3KG versus Mayo into ABG Demacia versus Key Guardians. So the only ABG team in EMEA, they are defying expectations currently, and they are going up against Key Guardians, who desperately need a win currently. I don't know when we will have that matchup up, but it looks like we are going to take a break, and after that, we will have that very hype matchup for you, so stay tuned. We will be right back. Hello, and we are back still with day 3 of Aegis EMEA. I'm still joined here by Spitz, and we just saw a fantastic first set where Ultraman unfortunately did fall in the end, but damn, he put up a fight. And now we have an even bigger setup for you because this is going to be ABG Demacia, who are currently up there in the group, which I think is a surprise because of who they are with. Because they are up against, for example, Washed Up Gaming, Kurashi, Teddy Kwabachi, Young Zara, and the Seraphine Fan Club, Bajatek, Alan, Cephalopod, and Pavalici. And now they are down against Key Guardians. And Key Guardians, unfortunately, how are they doing in the group spits?
They're currently not doing too great. I think they're the lowest in the group at the moment, but we're not even halfway through. Like this is the halfway point of the season. You can definitely pull it around from here, and I think that's what they're going to try and do. They're going to try and get some good wins coming up, and hopefully we can see the best of their play.
Yeah, for sure. I think especially now, especially in a group like this, where all of a sudden maybe the favorites are not quite performing as well as expected. Honestly, when I did my predictions, I thought, okay, this is going to be Washed Up, Seraphine Fan Club. They are going to be on the top. They are going to dominate this group. And now there's ABG just, at the top with them. I think this is a group where everything can happen. And so definitely Key Guardians can mount a comeback from here. And if they do it, maybe against always be gaming Demacia, that would be a good first step. Now, they have some good players. They have Bull Asha, they have Duno GP, they have JNSB and Karma. I recognize all of these names from community tournaments, so they're definitely not new players. And I think they have the tools definitely to come back into the group and maybe go to playoffs. So, what do you think of what they brought today? Because I have the lineups right in front of me right now, and
The
it
Key
is quite
Guardian.
interesting. Yes, the Key Guardians.
Yeah, they've got some interesting decks. It's Aesol Zoe Peak. I haven't opened it up yet. Is that Peak? Or is that
So
something else?
no, that is actually um back alley bar. So it's not quite
But no
both are 6
Seraphine,
mana
no.
landmarks.
It's no Seraphine and no Aphelios. But it's yeah, it is like a cat deck with one cat, is what I'm saying, and 3 Aurelion Soul, 3 Zoe. Wow.
Yeah,
I
it's
like this. I like this Aurelion Soul. He's cool. I think he's a.
yeah.
I kind of miss Aurelion Soul. When Targon released, you would see a little bit of play, and has seen very, very, very vague play with Peak. Um, so I'm glad to see someone trying bringing Aurelion Soul back. Some of the other decks are also interesting. Especially Aphelios Diana and Aphelios Vivic. That's why they're not running Aphelios. They're taken by the other two guys.
Ah, okay. Well, but that said, APG has also brought some spicy decks, and we are going to show them to you here, brought to you by Runeterra AR. I'm going to start off with this one because I already played this one. I think this is a fantastic deck. Team Mosaic, a lot of fun to play. As you can see, we have a lot of elusives in here. As you can see, we have a lot of buff spells in here. And I think everyone on stream, everyone in chat can figure out the game plan for this one, okay? You're going to slam down your elusives, you're going to buff them up, you're going to win the game. Now, it is a bit more complicated than I made it sound, obviously, because you always got to decide what and when you want to slam something on the board. But in general, you do have Asmus, which is a great target for Dark and Loadsome because all of a sudden you can buff up something up for +2/+2. You can grant something +2/+2, which is really powerful. You have Battle Bonds in here, which is a huge blowout. Should 2 of your units be targeted, and you have the Sudden Surge, which can be used offensively and defensively because all of a sudden maybe you have like an already pre-buff target that gets 3 damage on it, and then you've Sudden Surge, you can give it 5 HP right back, making it even harder to remove. And currently in the meta, we do have some decks that can deal quite well with elusive spam, but not every deck. And you can outrace quite a bunch of Demacia decks with this, as well as maybe go around 1 or 2 Seraphine decks. So I think this is really, really cool. Spitz, do you have any experience with this deck? Have you ever played it or played against it?
I have not played it, nor played against it, but what I am noticing is that if I was any type of opponent, I would hate fighting against this. If I'm Demacia, I can't justify challenging things just in case they sudden surge or purple berry. If I'm control, I can't justify using like P and Z numbers-based removal just in case they sudden surge or purple berry. And even if we do, there's just so many other elusives that they can just play anyway. And if you're playing control, you can't justify a vengeance on this little 2-mana dude. I think this deck is really interestingly favored in it seems a lot of things. What are its bad matchups? Do you know?
I have
Aggro,
no
I
idea.
presume.
So, yeah, aggro. Okay, yeah, aggro for sure. Yeah, that is for sure. But when I played the deck, I think I I I have about like a 60% win rate because I misplayed so much. Honestly, this deck was given to me by Z Turtle and was like, here, play it, let's go. And I think every game I lost, like in the first 10 games, was due to a misplay. So I actually don't know the matchups. I just know that it is harder to play than you might think looking at it. That's all I know.
Yeah, I do want to point out. I was just going to say quickly, Zoe is really interesting just because you can get the elusive and the double stun. But here we're seeing another Zoe deck. I've never seen the spells look like this, where it's underneath the followers. But this is what we were talking about earlier. This is the deck that I thought might have been peak before I opened it up. It's back alley bar, Pursuit of Perfection as a one
Mhm.
of, just a bunch of singleton Zoe Aurelian Soul stuff. Do you have any thoughts on this monstrosity? Not monstrosity, a monstrously large deck is what I meant to say.
I mean, this beauty of a deck. So
Yeah.
my first thought is this is almost a Highlander deck. So we're looking at all these one-offs, and I'm wondering, hey, this was maybe supposed to be a Seraphine deck, but then we wanted to play Seraphine in another deck, and I think um, the person that is running this lineup is also running Ezreal Seraphine. So that could be the reason. Um, the second thought I have is, while you weren't quite correct with the peak, I think you almost hit the nail on the head because in the end, Bekalipa also mana cheating 6 mana landmark, okay? It's basically the same thing.
Yeah, I would have liked to see the elusive cat, the 5 mana one that becomes a 5/5 draw card.
Mm-hmm.
They're also Karma, who's bringing this deck, is also bringing Seraphine Karma Victor, not the Ezreal one, and also Trundle Tryndamere. So like a really, I guess they're like a big control player that's just doing these really interesting control piles. I really want to see this being played because this looks like a really fun deck. I don't know how I feel about 3 ASOL. That feels like a lot. Not even like Dragons runs 3 ASOL, right? They normally run 2. And
Well,
I'm
now
scared that ASOL might be a brick.
yeah, it could definitely be a break. So I recently played a bit of ASOL as a one-off. So I played a bit of Nightfall Control, and their ASOL as a one-off felt like okay, but I was certainly like, okay, this is still a heavy job. I maybe want to play ASOL in like 1/5 of my games. Now with 3 ASOL, you probably want to play ASOL in every of your games. That said, the first ASOL is technically 9 mana only. That's an improvement, right? Like
Yeah.
Ali Bar helping you out, but for that you have to play a 6 mana landmark. So I think we can already say pretty comfortably you do want to ban aggro, probably with the whole lineup. Um, that said, you
For
do
sure.
also run Trundle Tryndamere. I like what Karma is doing here, okay? With all these control decks and then bring like a really interesting deck here. Look at all the variety of removal we have. We have Thermal Beam, Mystic Shot, Aftershock, Pill to a Peacemaker, some Fumes, Sunburst. I think especially Sunburst could be quite good. This is a card that I think got so much buffs. I mean, it's 5 mana, deal 6. That's already pretty good. Of the silence on top, absolutely fantastic. And then we have a bit of a removal in the Aloof Travelers as well. And I think I have to kind of remind people Aloof Travelers is not that much played right now because of Fanclub President, but it's basically proactive removal, especially if you are expecting to play against other decks that are also a bit more heavy on the top end.
Yeah, I mean, Aloof should hit bar, right? And that should be really good as a bar deck. Like, instead of being, I'll try again. Instead of Aftershock being the bar counter, you can just discard it with Aloof Travelers, not even let them get the unit or the, like, the temporary buff for the 1 turn before you Aftershock. Um, the more I look at this deck, the more and more I like it. There's just a lot of play. Like, what's always been the true with, like, Highlander decks is, like, the amount of play that you can get as a player trying to, like, you would know your deck better than anyone else knows your deck, and you've got so many options available to you that you really just can think and decide what the best play is, and you've got so many options that there will be a better play than in just like a 12/3 ofs and a 1 of. I also like that this guy is called Karma, and he's brought 3 control decks. I think he knows what he likes in this video game for sure.
Oh yeah, and one of them is actually Karma. So you know what? Perfect Meta Karma is somewhat viable, even if she is brought alongside of her improvement. I don't know. Seraphine kind of is like, in League, she's still
Yeah.
like Sona's identity. Here, she's like stealing Karma's identity, doing it a bit better. There's an interesting spot where if you don't have Seraphine and Karma aligned on the board correctly, unfortunately, the spells won't triple. But if you play around that, it should be pretty easy to fix. So, pretty interesting lineup. Now, on the other side, we saw a much more aggressive lineup from Miss Assassin, right? So, We do have Key Guardian, Karma going in with a full control lineup, and then on Always Be Gaming Demacia, we have Mist Assassin with like Vayne Zed, Fizzly, which is probably like the most aggressive lead deck, and Timo Zoe. That is gonna be, if they end up playing against each other, it should be pretty interesting.
With how this format is organized, if they've got first pick, they might first pick into this heavy control deck and try and do that. But if not, I'm looking at the other decks that ABG Demacia has, and they are mostly like aggressively focused, right? They've got the double up on the lineup that Mr. Assassin has, so Leah is also bringing that lineup. And then Pepsi Cola is running like Elise Gwen, Diana Leona, and Swain TF, which like Swain TF isn't like an aggro deck, but it's definitely not like the most control-y deck of all the control decks, right? So I think this all control lineup might struggle a little bit into all of these decks, maybe Swain TF. So it'll be interesting to see how this ends up happening.
Based Elise Gwen, I have to say. I'm pretty happy that Peps brought this. Diana Leona Nightfall, Daybreak, mid-range is a pretty aggressive deck. The deck can have some absolute blowout plays, right? Now that you have the Twilight Protector, that is just a very good card to like build your board up very fast and very big. And then you have obviously the Winning Light, and if that slams on turn 7, we know what happens. You win the game most of the time. Again, I think Always Be Gaming Demacia is just such a great team because it has legends like Peps Cola in there, but also Leah. And Leah is someone who just came up rather recently in the competitive scene. I remember just first hearing about Leah in one of the latest fight nights, and damn, Leah came in pretty well, and I'm super excited to see what Always Be Gaming Demacia can do. I think I underrate them quite a bit just because they were in such a heavy group and heavy hitter group with Washed Up and Seraphine Fan Club. But now that they are doing so well, I'm not super surprised. I'm like, okay, yeah, they can do it. And I think they're definitely a test for Key Guardians because Key Guardians, this is their first step, right? They have to get through this. And then they also have to get through Seraphine Fan Club and Washed Up. Now, we also have TKG with Ace in this group, which unfortunately is like kind of in like a middle spot. They can definitely also get back, be on the come up, but right now Key Guardians just at the very bottom just has to win every game they can get.
Yeah, this should be really good. I'm hoping that Key Guardians can get a win here, but I really did like ABD Demacia. Leah is obviously also known for like the meta reports, right? I think Leah has a really good take on what happens to the meta, understanding it in probably more than like a lot of people do. If you do a meta report every week, you're going to be really good at knowing what the meta is, what you should bring, what you should be playing, what's the most winning. And I really like ABD Demacia. And while I agree that they maybe weren't the favorites going into this, seeing how they've been playing and just seeing how everything's turned out, I think they might end up being the favorites. I mean, they're currently at the top. They've got to be the favorites in some perspective, right?
Sure, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think in that group, honestly, I still think Washed Up should take it. Washed Up is like, for me, is like maybe a contender to take the whole thing. Like, okay, they're not my boys, okay, they're not REO, but they are like the EU Masters winning German team plus young Zara, okay? How can you not like think that they might be able to win the whole season? I don't know. But right now, as you mentioned, ABG is coming in hot and Key Guardians have to take it back. Leah is gonna end up playing versus Karma here, which means we do have a pretty good matchup, I think, for Leah, because Leah has quite an aggressive lineup, but all of these decks should be pretty okay into control decks, because either we have a lot of protection or we have the option for denies, more protection, notifies.
Yeah. I will say that ABD Demacia had first pick, and I don't know if this was their first pick. I don't know if it was Leah into Karma, just get this matchup squared away and very favored on the side of Leah. But I think Karma is going to have to really rely on a lot of the PNZ removal to just hopefully get through stuff like the Vayne Zed and the Timo Zoe. But it's so hard for that to happen. What do you think the bans will be?
It's gonna be pretty interesting. We could potentially end up banning just FTR. It's just a pretty solid control deck that, if it takes a bunch of freezes, could potentially take the game versus Vayne Zed. I mean, it's still gonna be rough either way, but I would tend to ban that. That said, Zoe Aso is like super unpredictable. So if I was playing against it, I was like, okay, so the other two I played against a bunch, especially against FTR. I kind of know how to play those matchups. Against Zoe Aso, I don't know what's happening there. Might have to ban that one. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think from Karma's side, I think they have to ban the Vayne Zed. I think it's the most explosive deck out of all of these, right? Like Teemo Zoe
Mm.
has some explosive plays, but it doesn't like keep up explosiveness unless you've got the lodestone. And I think Fizz Lee Sin, you can try and play around it. You can try and force them to play low, and they're slightly slower than the other decks. So I think it's a ban on Vayne Z, right?
Yeah, I think the deck has probably like a sub 40% win rate into Vayne Z. That is not something you want to play against. And I do think this deck is going to be left open. So yeah, I think that's going to be the ban. It's nice that we see another Fizzly Sin like here in another lineup. I don't know. I'm an EMEA player. What is up with us in Fizzly Sin? What is going on?
I don't know. I've never seen it. I thought like I know a bunch of NA players that really really like Lee Sin, and then we're just seeing Lee Sin and a completely other variety just happening over in EMEA. Um, it must be doing something that we're just not seeing. They can see into using their third eye to work out what they should be playing, and we're just not seeing it. Yeah,
But
it's interesting. We've seen it twice. I think 4 or 5 players brought it. It's doing something, that's for sure.
yeah. Now, when it comes to the bans again, I just want to go back to the what does Lear ban? So if you expect your Vayne Z to be banned, honestly, do you just go for the ban on FTR? Like Vayne Z has a insanely good matchup into FTR, right? But if you expect that to be banned, you have to like see how is your matchup into FTR with the other two decks. And I think the elusives might struggle against cards, not necessarily like Avalanche, but more like Ravine. And all of a sudden, you can't
Yeah.
like use your reactive buff spells to like get your units out.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think like if you're from Lear side and you're saying, all right, I'm getting both of my band or city decks, you're much better into like PNZ removal, right? Like you're able to use the sudden surge to get out of Mystic Shot, and you're able to use Fizz to get out of Mystic Shot because that's just what Fizz does. And I think if you're going to be running into a bunch of like targeted removal, especially damage-based removal, I think you want to be playing your Ban or City decks into those and not as much into Feel the Rush and stuff, which uses freezes as well as like AoE non-target removal. I think the elusive deck also like it does. It's not a go wide plan, but it does go wide a little bit, and it can suffer to your avalanches and your ravines. So I do think you ban Feel the Rush here if you see the ban on Vayne Z coming through. But this could mean from Karma's side that you realize this and then change your lineup entirely, and try and figure ways out to deal with it. Like if they're going to ban Feel the Rush, then maybe you've got a better matchup into Vayne Z. I presume they've all scrimmed this and figured out what the best bans are. But I think there's a lot of interesting mind games you can do with this ban.
Yeah, so this is why tournaments are so exciting, right? Because people scrim a lot for this, prepare a lot for this, and then you see something like the Zoe Ace come out of the sudden, and you don't see that on ladder, right? Even like
No.
in low master ladder, where people just like play the weirdest stuff and experiment around, you probably don't see something like this because these decks, even though they look crazy, the players potentially put a lot of time into these. I mean,
Yeah.
every now and again we have a player just like bring something with gut feeling. I gotta say, like Ghost Driver, for example, does a lot for seasonals. Like every seasonal, when he 9-0s, he tells me, "Oh yeah, so my lineup, I was missing one deck, and there was like this one deck my friend like gave me, and I didn't have any games on it, but like I went 9-0, so it's probably pretty good."
I could never imagine going into a seasonals without having games on a deck. Like every single time it's a seasonal day, I make sure I get like at least like 20 games on all the decks that I want to play. But different strokes for different folks, right? Like some people just want to play the game differently, and it works for them very clearly if they're going 9-0 so regularly. Um, but tournaments are just crazy in Legends of Runeterra. There's so many different ways you can look at tournaments, both in the ban, in the bring, in the play, and I think it's why I enjoy watching competitive so much. It's like all the interesting stuff that tournament play can do about banning and even deck selection, card selection. Um, it becomes like a really fascinating thing to watch.
Yeah. Still, I don't know how Zoe Asol is winning any of these matchups personally. I
No.
can maybe see the elusive matchup like being the easiest, but otherwise, you just have so many expensive cards and so many one-offs that might not get you there. Especially as you mentioned ASO, like sticking an ASO versus any of these decks is just like something that's not going to happen. Like you've already won the game by that point,
And the
right?
only way to kill Fizz is through a hush, right? Every single other piece of removal is targeted.
Ooh, well that's a problem
Ooh.
because there's only one Hush in the deck.
Yeah, well, if there's a card in the deck, it's probably a one of, and it's yeah. I mean, you can get something off your 2 fan clubs, your 1 financier, your 1 telescope. Priestess, I don't think can get you anything, and yeah, but it just seems tough. It just seems tough to deal with the Fizz, especially if they put a scout weapon or an impact weapon. It's going to be a tough time to deal with it.
Yeah, for sure. Meanwhile, on the other side, I think Leah has, as you mentioned, maybe a mind game going on here where you expect your Vayne Z being banned and all of a sudden you adjust your ban. But other than that, I just gotta say, I would favor Leah in this matchup, not only because of the specific matchups, but just because of the simplicity of the lineup. I think Leah is someone who has probably a lot of games on Fizzly Sin, because otherwise I don't think he would ever bring that deck. And then the other two decks, while they have some interesting play patterns, they also are not the hardest decks to execute. And this is also always something that is super, super important. Now we see the bans come through. We actually did ban FTR, so we actually, okay, I like this. We played around it. We actually played around it. We were like, okay, they're gonna ban Vayne Z, so we ban FTR.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think that's a really, I'm gonna say heads up play. This isn't like a play, it didn't happen within the game, but it was I think it was a really good decision made. Because I think Karma cannot justify leaving Vayne Z up. You just can't. Just in
Yeah.
the off chance that something happens, you can't leave it up. And so I think banning FTR was really, really good. And we're seeing these matchups, and Karma can try, for sure, to use PNZ removal to deal with Sudden Surge and Fizz, but it's gonna be difficult.
Now,
But we never
these
know. You never know. And Bar can
yeah.
just do something.
True, Bar can always find a Hail Mary, as can Fan Club President. So definitely still a match to be played. I'm just happy like that we were able to figure out these bans. Although we can't toot our own horn all too much because we had a lot of time, right? We had about like 5 to 10 minutes to figure this one out. So
Yeah.
it's still glad we arrived at like the correct bans at the end.
Yeah, it always feels good to do something and then have like the pros that are pros at the decks also agree with you. Just makes you feel good that if you were playing this, you would be doing the right thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that you get the right bans because you're like also considered a pro, right? So it's
Some
there's
redeeming
more.
qualities for sure. Some people like my play.
There's more stake from you here to get the right bans. But that
For
said,
sure.
we're in for a couple of really interesting matchups. I want to see all of
Yeah.
these decks. Like,
I do. All of these
we
decks look fun. Maybe the Seraphine one less so, but yeah.
yeah, maybe the Seraphine less one. But the other ones, like, those are not decks we usually see on ladder, right? So I'm super excited to just like get into the game, see them play. FaZe Lee especially, because I have seen a bit of Zoe team up by playing it myself, but then also this Zoe Acel. If that somehow takes a game, I don't know. I'm gonna be surprised,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna be really happy.
I'm going to be excited as well. I think one of the best things about a tournament format again is like the ability to you have to bring 3 decks, and so finding your third deck or your second deck can be really interesting to find like these fringe decks or creating your own fringe decks and trying to see them be brought into light and then spreading them to everyone if they see it be successful. And we are going to see the Teemo Zoe versus the Fizzly Sin.
All right,
No,
there we go.
not Fizzly Sin. The
Oh,
Teemo Zoe versus Zoe Acel. I know my words. I've said them a few times.
okay. We have Zoe on one side, not on the side. Oh, we have Zoe on both sides. Okay, let's go.
And I think we're just going to see the Zoe into the Zoe.
Trickster never loses because
The classic
I think that's a
trade.
fair trade. Leah doesn't have an elusive if he loses his Zoe though.
Yeah, maybe we
And
do.
you can buff up the Zoe with the Darkened Lodestone. So maybe you don't do this trade on the side of Leah. But if you do Zoe into Lodestone, you're losing to Mystic. Wow, this is already difficult and we've already just got into the start of the game.
Oh, hot damn. See? I'm happy because I struggled a bit with this deck, and I was like, okay, this deck is not straight up just like elusive spam. This is like, it's a bit more complicated, but it seems that Leah is opting into the Zoe trade here. I feel like, yeah, if you don't do this, you're just like too vulnerable to Mystic shots, so I like this from Leah a lot.
Yeah, and I like, if your deck is full of elusives, you are going to draw more elusives, so I think this is a very fine trade. And here we have the Esmus, right, which I think you just play down. You don't get any strike, you don't get any damage, but the Chime is good, and you're going to force them to Mystic, because if they don't Mystic here, you're going to put the weapon on, and it's going to be even harder dependent to do anything. And so Karma will just go for the Mystic here, which I think is justified, definitely. And Leah struggling just a little to like be able to put pressure on against a deck that like just wants to slow down the game as much as possible. But if Leah draws an elusive or two, they should definitely be in Leah's position.
Yeah, this is not a deck where you just have to have a curve. I mean, this is an elusive deck where obviously if you have a curve, you can slam down some early damage, but if you don't, you are fine, right? You have some absolute explosive power plays. Like, we see the Darker Lodestone. That with just like any elusive is all of a sudden a 7/7 elusive spell shield swinging in.
Yeah.
Super scary.
I really like the sisters take. I think as Karma, all you're really thinking about is survival and dealing with elusives. And being able to play an elusive, one of your very few elusives you can... It is the only elusive that you can get off Priestess. I think is quite heads up. We're going to see the flight here. Not take any of the chimes. I guess that's fine because the flight goes back into the deck, but you did want to put in a little bit of damage, I thought. And I don't know how big a 4/4 will be. It does allow you to do physical damage as opposed to elusive damage, having a 4/4 Wandering Shepherd, but I don't think that's where you want to put all your eggs in the Wandering Shepherd basket.
For sure not, but I think Leah was kind of fine with it, right? Because you played both of these, knowing that right now you only have a non-elusive card in hand, so you're like kind of already expecting to potentially hit this Shepherd. And now this is in the end a 4/4 that Karma somehow has to deal with. This is quite a big swing, even though there's not a single elusive on the board.
Yeah, I mean, like, you don't have to rely on elusives, and this deck does run, like, we can see most of the non-elusives, but it still does run non-elusives, and against Karma's deck, like, they're not going to have that many blockers, so the concept of an elusive versus a non-elusive isn't as pronounced as it would be against, like, Demacia decks, right, where their only elusive interaction is Challenger and Sharpside. Here, the interactions are going to be the same for physical units and elusive units either way. I do quite like the... Yeah, I really like the aloof here. There's not many other plays you can make, and aloof discarding... Probably one of the better cards to discard, I'll be honest. Despite its cheapness.
Maybe the best, even. This is
I
such
think so.
a huge
I think there's
card.
justifications for Sudden Surge being better. Yeah. I mean, that's their late game, right? Their late game is Harazzi. And so removing that is pretty good.
Yeah. Now you still have to get to the late game, but yeah, if you get to the late game now that with Harazzi removed, that's pretty insane. That said, if you are going to take aim here, you see a couple of elusives in hand. So all of a sudden, from 0 to 10 damage, Leah does a lot here, but there is a lot of healing on Karma's side. We have the Star Shaping hand, we have the 3 sisters. All cost a lot of mana though. Let's see if we can ever hit that on the board. Meanwhile, these 2 Pokesticks could potentially just go face. Deal 2 damage, draw you a couple more elusives, maybe draw you a couple of buff spells. Teemo is an interesting card because technically Teemo always pushes a bit more damage than he represents just as a unit because those mushrooms are going to be shuffled in the deck.
Yeah, I think the quick attack weapon was also like a really, really good get. Possibly the best get that the Shepherd could have gotten, even better than Scout in this position, because you can't trade into the bird, and a 4/1 against a deck that has to Mystic Shot it eventually doesn't feel great. I think we might be seeing that right now. But they're just going to get the weapon back. You've only killed a 2/1 here. You've not actually killed a 4/1.
Yeah.
And this quick attack weapon's just going to go forward. I don't know if we can Mystic there. I think you have to do it on the stack.
Yeah, that means that we now have the quick attack on an elusive, right? So we have like, we actually boost up the damage of the units that can't be blocked currently.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that Mystic Shot, but I guess he's just wanting to like bank mana by doing the Mystic Shot now as opposed to doing it next turn. But on Karma's side, we've got a lot of expensive cards, the Bar, the Sisters, the Star Shaping, but you don't have necessarily the time to play them all. And Leah is going to be able to push a fair bit of damage here. I'm counting 6 damage via elusives if we equip the weapon. They're going to go for the double stun, I presume, but... Or probably the Sisters. I think you do the Sisters, yeah.
You could do the sisters, or hear me out. What if you just go for the bar? Right? Like, you know, 2 cards in your opponent's hand, so there's only 1 card left, and this will allow you to, if they develop somehow, like if they play the weapon or develop, you can still play the stun.
Yeah, I do like the bar. I think that, yeah, now that I see it, the bar is much better. It allows you to just make this expensive hand, like, now a medium cost hand. How did that happen? I guess they all just went to the bar. And while Leah can go for like an attack hit with the Pokey Stick, try and get another thing, Karma should be able to double stun if he equips the weapon, and set up the sisters, and it seems pretty good. You also get Fading Memories, which I didn't talk about, but Fading Memories is like a pretty good get here, I'll be honest. You can copy an elusive, and you can copy the Lifesteal sisters.
Yeah, and that's another elusive, right? So,
Yeah, it'll give you a temporary seal and an elusive. So I think, honestly, this is probably one of the best things that I got on the bar.
yeah, this looks good again. Wait, oh, okay, so we go for block against the stun. We keep the stun maybe for like big units. I would have liked to see the stun.
I don't hate this play, because I think you can do the stun in 2 turns time, or in 1 turn time, while the Fading Memories play requires you to have a lot of actions, and it commits you to like a lot of mana over the next 2 turns. the next 3 turns. So I don't hate just killing off their flight here with your, or trying to kill off their flight. They'll probably do purple and you'll probably do Pale Cascade. But I don't hate this play at all. And maybe doing it on the sisters was a little too cute. In the end.
Yeah, you're right. I think killing the flight here obviously stops their resource generation quite a bit. All of a sudden they have like 2 unknown cards in hand, but they're not gonna like out resource you, and you have plenty of time next turn to slam down the sisters. You still have the star shaping, so you have quite a bunch of healing. Let's see.
Yeah. Ooh! I do like this. I think Leah's realizing that he can't just throw his stuff to Karma, let it die, and just not have any ways to win the game. And so I think this allows you to win the game over the next 2 turns more effectively, rather than just throwing your stuff and only dealing a little bit more damage but having much less units and being able to be outgrinded. This allows you to continue playing the deck almost more combo-y in the sense that you're trying to do a lot of value in one turn, as opposed to being aggressive and just letting your units die. So I really like this play, although knowing that Karma has not only 2 elusives, but also a bunch of healing, I think Karma might win this. I mean, this is like way too early to say this, obviously, but I'm just looking at Karma's position, and this is a lot of HP and a lot of blockers.
Yeah, we throw it on the Zoe as a sacrifice. She's just there to tank a block next turn. I mean, a lot of times Zoe isn't really like the big win condition. You don't need her to flip. But now you don't even need her to generate anything. It's like, okay, you are a 1/1 elusive blocker. I take it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, Karma's got enough, like, generation in hand, right? I realize Karma, both the player and the unit, can actually have that apply to them. But we've got the Fan Club, we've got the Star Shaping, we've got Time Trick, like, we've got the, and a draw. 4 of our cards give us another card. I think that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So I think Karma's simply just going to be able to outvalue and is willing to not get the super cool star chart. It doesn't really matter in this position as much.
Yeah, I mean, why we don't have, like, the literal Devil Seraphine in this deck, we still play, like, the Eldritch Horrors of Bar and Seraphine's biggest fan, aka Millie. So, you know, I think Karma should have this almost in the bag. Maybe Leah can somehow win it. The big problem really is that we kind of lost our Horazi. Horazi would have been fantastic here.
Definitely.
But yeah, now the open attack looks like the best thing we can do, but even then, this is just not pushing enough damage.